It was just during that time when everything started falling apart back home, and when I was watching all these things being destroyed, all these artifacts being destroyed from my nation and from my culture, that pushed me to do a better job. And honestly, a lot of people love that restaurant and love how these sculptures look, but not a lot of people know that it was happening during that same time that the original ones being destroyed.
Welcome to episode 20 of the Assyrian Podcast. My name is Rhoda, and I'm so thrilled to be back again as your host for this week's episode. Have you ever found yourself in search of meaning in your life? You know, those times when you turn to the things you love, like music, poetry, and art, to make sense of your struggles and work through them? Well, today we're going to get in the mind's eye of a sculptor, painter, and a true Assyrian artist who has wrestled with all of those questions from an Assyrian perspective and created amazing, hopeful responses. Reni Stephan is a full-time artist who specializes in sculptings and oil paintings. One of his most well-known projects is the sculptures and paintings inside Ishtar Restaurant here in Sterling Heights, Michigan. The restaurant has a very distinct Assyrian feel that immediately transports you to ancient Assyria, and Reni is responsible for creating that ambiance. Assyrians and non-Assyrians alike come to see his work at the restaurant and often find themselves in his studio across the street to tell him how meaningful his work was to them. Aside from his work at Ishtar, he has also worked with the poet Marina Benjamin to create pieces that accompany her poems. His artwork was featured on the cover of her latest book, Niqwa Uyama, or Lady in the Ocean. In this episode, you will hear him discuss those projects, as well as some personal reflections on his work and his hopes for the arts in the Assyrian community. Whether you've been listening to the Assyrian Podcast for a while, or if you're a brand new listener, reach out to us and let us know by emailing us at assyrianpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to also follow us on social media and, most importantly, subscribe and review the podcast. You can also help us by spreading the word and telling your friends to visit us on our website, www.assyrianpodcast.com, where they can follow the links to subscribe using an iPhone or an Android. We're also really excited to announce that you can now find all of our episodes streaming on Spotify. I can't tell you how much we have enjoyed getting to know various Assyrians and bringing you their stories, and we want to thank you for being a part of our worldwide community of Assyrian podcast listeners. Finally, a huge thank you to our sponsor, John Oshana from HomeSmart. Whether you're thinking about purchasing or selling your home either in Arizona or California, contact John Oshana Real Estate Professional at 209-968-9519, on Facebook at John Oshana Realtor, or at john.oshana on Instagram. Now, here's my conversation with Reni Stephan.
I was born in Baghdad, Iraq, in 1981. I lived most of my life, until I was around 10 years old. We left Iraq. A few years later, we resigned in Detroit, Michigan. I started grade 5 elementary. I didn't think I had any interest in art, besides just doing normal drawings, as we all do when we were kids. But then mostly in the middle school, when I started taking some classes, and we had some competitions going on in school during that time, I did some drawings, and I found myself that I was really interested in that. I grew up drawing a lot. When I went to high school, became more serious. Took a lot of art classes. My art teacher introduced me to one of the best colleges here in Michigan for arts. It's College for Creative Studies. So that's how I began my art,
Do you remember the first piece you did that made you think, yep, this is what I want to do?
I remember I was in 9th grade. So I had a sculpting class, and we had a project where we could choose anything, and that was like the end of the year project. And most of the year was probably just doing normal class stuff as the art teacher directed, but that project was up to us, up to the students, to choose something to sculpt or paint. I remember at the time was a sculpture of Aga Potros I did, because I was always interested in history and read all about Greece. So I remember I did a bust of Aga Potros, and when that was done, I realized that the attention that I got from that piece, and it was like number one in the class, and I got like number one prize in the class after that. We had like a small competition. I realized that this was something that I really wanted to do. But as the years went on, I continued like practicing and painting, sculpting. So it was an ongoing thing.
You do oil paintings as well as sculptures. Is there one you enjoy more than the other?
I enjoy both. I enjoy painting and I enjoy sculpture. To me, I think it's got a little bit of different feeling. When I paint, it's a little bit more peaceful than when I sculpt. The sculpture deals with a lot of physical work, casting, molding, pouring, and carrying, and heavy stuff. With painting, it's peaceful. I sit and listen to music and paint. So it's a little bit different, but I love both the same. Yeah.
We're sitting here in your studio where I see some things you're working on and some of your oil paintings, some finished, some unfinished.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what inspires you to start a piece. If you're just painting for yourself or sculpting something for yourself, where do you get your inspiration from?
Well, it depends on a subject. If I am doing portraits of individuals, I normally like to find out a little bit about their history and find out about that person that I'm working with, and that's where most of my inspiration comes from. But if I'm doing a narrative painting where it deals with a subject like a history, obviously that comes from the love that I have for my history. That's an inspiration. That's the biggest inspiration I have when it comes to historical pieces. And obviously when I'm doing the religious pieces, that also, I am a religious person. I love going to church and seeing different art pieces that other artists did.
I recently watched a documentary called Silence After the Storm. I don't know if you've watched it. There is a part of that documentary that's about an Assyrian artist in Syria. Mm-hmm. And one of the things he said that stuck with me was that he said a lot of different feelings inspire artists, and that grief and sorrow have a way of bringing out the truth in whatever you're sculpting or you're painting. Yeah. And I'm curious how much that rings true for you. Absolutely. In terms of that feeling.
Of course it does. A lot of times when I watch something that's bad in the news, or something that relates to my history and culture and how it's being destroyed, all these things, they inspire my work because I want to rebuild what we're being lost. But yes, of course, when I watch things like that, it inspires me to work only because I want to do better. I want to show people that there is hope, not for any other reason. So I wanted to show people that we still have hope. Through our art, at least me, through my art, I could show that our nation is still alive and strong, and we could still continue.
I am remembering the videos of ISIS destroying our artifacts in Iraq, and I'm sure it impacted Assyrians all in different ways. Yes. I'm wondering how it impacted you, not just as an Assyrian, but as an artist.
Well, of course, it impacted me a lot because I was devastated. Like when I was working, during that time, I was actually working at Ishtar restaurant. It was just during that time when everything started falling apart back home. And when I was watching all these things being destroyed, all these artifacts being destroyed from my nation and from my culture, that pushed me to do a better job. And honestly, a lot of people love that restaurant and love how these sculptures look, but not a lot of people know that it was happening during that same time that the original ones being destroyed. So that inspired me to do a much better job than I would have probably done before.
Let's talk about Ishtar Restaurant because we have listeners who are not from the Detroit area. Sure. And so I want you to talk a little bit about restaurant and how you were commissioned to do the work inside the restaurant.
Yeah, so Ishtar Restaurant came about 3.5 years ago when I was doing completely other things. I was with my uncle that does construction work. So he parked over there because he had some kind of business with these people, and there was a new restaurant being open. So I was just sitting in the car and I'm looking, and it says coming soon, Ishtar Restaurant. And I love that name. I said, this is such a beautiful name for a restaurant. Probably 5 minutes later, I get a phone call from my uncle that was inside talking to these owners. He said, hey, listen, I was talking to the owners, and I told them that you're an artist, maybe you should come and look. And they were looking for somebody to design this place. I said, sure. So I was, when I walked inside of the place, and right away, I could see the whole picture. It was just as if something came in me. I said, you know what, I got to do something here that's gonna change a lot of lives and a lot of people's minds about our history. I didn't say anything to him. I introduced myself to the owners. They were both there, and then I showed them some of my work. They loved it immediately. So I said the only thing I could do is take some pictures of the place and do some design work, and hopefully we'll go from there. So I designed the whole place according to what I thought everything would fit on the walls. I chose some of the most well-known pieces from our culture, some of the strong pieces from our culture. I wanted to impact people when they see it. And I also chose a very large scale. I wanted them to be just moved when they saw those things, when they walked in there. Even though it's just a restaurant, but I wanted to do something. That was my time to do something, to do some kind of a change here. That's how I got the commission. When I showed them the design, the owners were just completely blown away. They said, "Is this really going to be our restaurant?" I said, "Yes, it's going to look actually better than this because this is just a picture. You're going to actually get the real sculptures." And so, I got the commission. We started working. It took me about close to 7 months to complete the whole project. It was very fast. I worked night and day, holidays. I did not take any breaks. It was just it was an ongoing thing. I had friends that helped me a lot with casting. It was heavy work. So it was kind of a teamwork, but in the end, I accomplished something that I've always wanted to do. I've been working with artifacts and Assyrian and Babylonian artifacts since I was like a very young age. So this was my time to actually show something that I could do in a larger scale. In the end, the results were amazing. People are being blown away, and I get people telling me that they come from out of state, out of country, and the first thing they do when they think about Detroit is like, we want to visit the extra restaurant. So that's kind of I get happy when I hear people.
What are some of the pieces that you did for the restaurant? I
did the Ashur-Nazarpal chariot, the lion hunt. That's a very well known piece from the history. I also did the 2 Babylon lions that was near the Ishtar gates. I've done the Lamassu, 2 Lamassus, also like a nice scale of those pieces, replicas. I did the Qithara, the musical instrument from Sumerians. I did the Ishtar gates in a large scale. I also did the Tree of Life. I've done Hammurabi, Masalat Hammurabi. I did that, the Code of Hammurabi. And I did also paintings. I've done one painting, a large scale painting of the lion hunt. Also, that's sitting across from that large size sculpture. And that Ashurbanipal sculpture, that's about 6.5 by 20 feet wide, so it's gigantic, yeah. And the painting is sitting right across from it. So, and I've done a little bit more stuff. When you enter the restaurant, I also did 2 columns of Lamassus. They're 7 foot high, and I did the map of Iraq with all the cities and artifacts. So that's and that's all I can remember. Yeah. And I've done a lot of pieces for them. Yeah.
You talked about rebuilding some of our history that's being lost at the moment. Yes. And has been in the process of destruction over the years because of genocides and different things. It's 2018. There are different types of art in the world. And I'm wondering what you think about the process of preserving what we had in our history versus moving forward and creating new pieces. This is something we've talked about with a couple of people on the podcast. Yes. Preservation of the culture versus ensuring it continues and continues to thrive and grow. Where do you see that juncture as it relates to your artwork and just Assyrian artwork in general?
Well, most of my work that I do personally for myself, it's more modern Assyrian art. I am a classical artist. I deal with a lot of realism. I've studied anatomy, and with all due respect to all the other styles of art, with me it's more like realistic art. When I have my own stuff that I'm working on for my shows, most of the pieces are from the history, but I've got a new take on them, a new way of showing my pieces. If it's Lamassos or if it's a bust of kings, I do completely different than our original art. But I also love our original art because that's something that a lot of our people it's been taken away from our people, and a lot of people are not familiar with those pieces. So the reason why I chose to do something that was ancient in Ishtar restaurant, because I wanted to introduce our history to those people that have never actually seen it. I've never probably even read about it. Maybe they've heard us. We have Babylon, we have Mesopotamia, Assyria, but they've never actually seen anything that's close to what was like before.
Mm-hmm.
So showing it in a scale that I chose was a way of forcing it on these people in a good way. I wanted them to really see. It changed a lot of people's lives because a lot of people tell me our kids are interested in art now. Our kids are interested in history. We are interested in history. When we see these pieces, we go and study about these pieces. We take picture and we go and try to see what this is all about. And what we found out was something so amazing, and it changed a lot of people's minds about our history. And this was kind of my goal. But when it comes to doing my own work, my own personal work, it's completely different. It may have the same subject, but it's more in a modern way that I do it. Yeah.
You were recently at an event in Chicago that took place at the Oriental Institute. And for listeners who don't know, the Oriental Institute in Chicago displays a lot of Assyrian artifacts. Yeah. Talk to me about that event and talk to me how your piece came to be auctioned at the event.
So an organization bought one of the pieces to be auctioned at the museum for that night, and knowing just how when I was working on that piece for them was the Babylon Lion. When they sent me pictures of the event, I was really moved because I've been to the museum, I visited it, it's so beautiful, and to see one of my pieces displayed next to the actual piece was amazing. That kind of shows that after all these years of all these years that we've been destroyed and we've been taken away from all our pieces and our art and history and our country, to see after all these years that we still exist and we have artists that still are embracing and showing this culture in an old and a new way was very moving to me when I see these pictures. It was just amazing to be displayed. It was actually displayed next to the actual piece, so I was very happy.
I've been thinking about that because every time I think about it, I get chills.
Yeah.
If I were you, and
yeah.
I imagine you can tell me if you felt the same way, but if I saw something that my hands created next to something that my ancestors created,
exactly.
That is such a moving experience. So I can't even imagine what that was like for you.
It was an amazing feeling. It was almost, to me, it was a big accomplishment to see that. All my hard work, all these years, to see one of my pieces being displayed next to the real ones, it was just something moving. It was very personal. I was very happy, and I felt like, you know what, and it motivated me to do even much better work, so.
You said earlier when we were talking about the Ishtar restaurant that parents and kids would see the art and would be inspired to become artists or learn about the history. I'm curious what your family's reaction to you pursuing the arts was. A lot of Assyrian families and in other cultures too, they push their kids to get an education and get a job that's going to pay well, and that means pushing their kids away from the arts. And I'm wondering what your family's reaction was when you said this is what you wanted to do.
So my family has been supportive of me since the beginning, honestly. I come from a family that are all musicians and artistic and open-minded. So probably the biggest support is my dad. He's in my studio half of the time watching me work. I guess he's very happy that I've accomplished my dream to be able to do this full time. Unfortunately, not a lot of artists get this opportunity, and I'm very fortunate that I do have my own studio, and I am just in my studio work. My family always was supportive of me, and I see a lot of people now. You know, when we were designing Ashtar and everything, so a lot of things came along during the end of the project. I was telling the owners that you should have, you know how when you go to a restaurant they have these coloring crayons for little kids. So what we did was we added all these artifacts and wrote a little story on all these. So now when little kids go there and they see and they see these pieces and they're actually coloring the Babylon Lion and the Lamassos and the Babylon Tower and the Ishtar Gates. See, these kids actually ask and they ask their parents and what these things are. And I've seen a lot of support from also those parents teaching their kids. I don't know if they want them to pursue art. I don't know. That's their. But to me, it's like amazing when I hear these people come into my studio and they tell me that our kids are so interested in art now and history because of what you've done there. That makes me really happy. So,
are you involved in any initiatives to support young artists or any kind of apprenticeship
So yeah, my studio is open all the time. I get a lot of people coming from Ohio. I got a lot of people coming from Virginia, Texas. A lot of people that actually visit the restaurant. They tell me that their kids are interested in learning art. I got a guy that was from Ohio. He said that he has 3 kids that they love art, and from what they've seen at the restaurant, they really want to pursue and do sculpture and work with clay. And so when they came to visit my studio, the man asked me if I was able to help his kids, and I've been helping them a lot. They come to my studio, they help me out, mold making, castings, and work with clay. And I've got a lot of people that actually come in here and help, and they learn. And yeah, so my studio is always open.
The other thing I've been thinking about as I've been looking at your work and we've been talking is how you create art that probably bears a little bit of your soul and who you are,
Yeah.
but it's also your livelihood. This is what you do for a living. This
Yeah.
is how you make money. People commission you to do various pieces, and art can be so closely related to who we are. I've been thinking about a creative writing teacher I had who refused to grade our poems because she said she couldn't put a grade on a piece of our soul.
Yes, of course.
And so I've been thinking about that with your art pieces. How do you reconcile those two things, that this is art that displays a piece of my soul, but it's also how I make my money, and
Yes.
if you're being pragmatic and realistic. I'm just wondering what that's like for you.
To me, it's like any piece that I do, if I don't love it, I don't do it. Any piece that I get commissioned, if it's portrait or if it's a historical or religious piece, if I don't love the piece and really fall in love with the subject, I normally don't end up doing it because I really don't feel close to the subject. And I've turned down quite a lot of work because this is probably the subject matter, or I want to deliver something that I really feel and feel good about, even though sometimes it's not my own subject. I've worked with writers, poems, especially Marina Benjamin, a well-known writer, Syrian writer. So I've worked very close with her. I painted a few poems that one of my paintings became her book cover, quite with among like 2 other great artists that work with that book. So like I said, unless I feel very close to the subject, even though it's not mine, unless I feel very connected to it, then I just don't do it. But most of the time when you see me working and any piece that I create, yes, I do feel very close to it.
What was the piece that you did that was based on one of her poems?
Yes, actually, 2 of them were based on her poems. I wish I had a little bit more time to do more, but the project they were working on a project very fast, and I only had time to do 2 paintings, and one of them became Niqo Yama. That was her book cover. I do work with a lot of people that have beautiful songs that they've written, and they come and tell me, can we do this and can we paint this? So I feel very connected. If I feel very connected with a piece, yes, I pursue it.
What's the process like for creating a sculpture? Because you talked about clay work,
Yes.
and then molding and casting. Walk me through what that whole process is like, beginning to end.
Sculpture is a little bit different than painting, it's because you're dealing with a 3-dimensional object. It requires physical work. When I'm, for example, sculpting a piece, I have to deal with building the armature, which requires you to have either like pipes and things like that to be welded together, and wires, and to build a structure of a piece. And then on top of that structure, you have to build another structure that's lightweight, maybe foam or anything like that has to be sculpted, but maybe like only to a certain degree. It cannot be final. And then on top of that, you have to start laying the clay. And then with clay is where the modeling comes in. The sculpture, you have to deal with a lot of details and carving, and so when that's all the first stages of the sculpture. And when all the model's completed and finished, a lot of times I 100% of the time we have to create a mold, because clay cannot be displayed as a final work. It's got to be done in a different material. It could be bronze, stone, resin. It depends on the subject, or it depends on what people prefer. A lot of times when the sculpture is done, I have to build a rubber mold over that, and then when that rubber mold dries, I have to build another fiberglass mold on top of that. And then once that process is complete and the mold is opened up, I have the mold in my hand. So all that original sculpture that we've been working on for months and months, it just becomes a waste mold. And now we have the mold to work with. That's our masterpiece. So then you have to deal with casting that piece in a certain, whatever material people refer. If it's stone, I have to brush on the stone and deal with fiberglasses. And then once that process is all complete and you open up the mold, you have the piece that's basically pure off-white or white. So now it depends on the subject. We have to, for example, if I am doing an ancient piece, I have to make that piece look like it's thousands of years old. It's not just something that was now born. It has to look very authentic. So then I have to deal with, it's called a patina, a process called patina, where I do a bunch of glazes of colors to make that piece look very old and authentic. So it's a long process to have something complete and finished. But with painting, it's a little bit different. Painting, you have a canvas or a panel or whatever you're working on. You start off with a drawing, initial drawing, underlayer, and then you start working with colors. It's very lightweight. It's very colorful paintings. But like I said, I love working with sculpture as much as I love painting. So.
How long does it take you to finish a sculpture from start to finish if it's human size, let's say?
That also depends on my mood a lot of times. A lot of times I could get something like that going within probably from start to finish complete project. Could be like probably 2 months. It takes a while because it's a long process. It's just dealing with all that framework and all that clay work, and that takes time itself. And then when you start sculpting, that's also, you got to deal with at least a month of that, or not, sometimes even more. I've had projects that I've completed in a month. I've had projects that I've completed in 6 months. So it just depends on a subject matter too.
When do you know when a piece is done?
It's never done. It's never done, believe me. But we learn this as we grow up and we study art. There is a time that you have to let go. There's a certain time where you just feel like it's complete. And to me, when I finish a piece and I come the next day, and 99% of the time I touch it again because I feel like I overlooked something, or maybe I was concentrating on something for too long. I overlooked other places. So it just depends. You have to learn as an artist. A lot of times you think you have to perfect something, and we're human beings. We cannot do anything perfect. So we'll do it as the best we can, and then learn to let go sometimes. And a lot of times I feel like this piece, I should not go more with it, and I just stop.
You said you like going to museums.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what that's like for an artist to go and view other people's work.
Yeah.
And especially when you go to places like the DIA, the
Mm-hmm.
Detroit Institute of Art, where they display Assyrian pieces. Yeah. What is that like for you?
So I get this question a lot, and the first thing I tell people is like, it's like when your phone battery is dying and you need to recharge it. Mm-hmm. I go there to get recharged. Mm-hmm. When I go to the museum, it's very personal to me. If I go with my friends, that's more like just walking through and showing some people, just teaching them about some pieces and how these things work. But when I go myself, it's completely just recharging my batteries. I go there and I see myself, I'm in a different world. I'm in a world where this is where I want to be one day. I want to have one of my pieces being displayed in one of these places. So I get inspired from all these masters, all the paintings and sculptures that I see. And a lot of times as many times as I've been there, I've probably been there a million times. I go there 3-4 times a week. But every time I have a project that I'm going to start, it's an important project, I go to the museum and walk around for probably 3-4 hours and take my sketchbook and just draw. And if it's painting, I study the masters and how they laid their colors, and I look very closely. I see things that other people probably overlook, because this is what I do. Mm-hmm. So it's very personal to me. Yes, and when I go to the museums, it's very important to me that I'm always there, and it keeps me going.
Who are some of your favorite artists that you look up to, get inspiration from?
So there's a lot of artists, throughout the history that I've studied and seen. I mean, Rembrandt, for example, Bouguereau, obviously Raphael, Da Vinci, Michelangelo. I mean, all these artists I've studied, since I was a little kid, and I've looked up to a lot of those artists. So it just depends. It depends. I like them all differently. They all have their own styles, and I like each style, different. So.
What is your hope for Assyrian art
Mm-hmm.
in our community?
Well, my hope is always to be recognized by others, by other cultures and other nations, because we are just as much as capable of any other cultures. People just need to realize that we are still living, we are still existing. A lot of people, when I was in college, they tell me, "You're Assyrian, wow, you guys still exist?" Yes, we do. I tell them, we do exist, I'm here. So I've taught a lot of people from my college that, and actually a lot of those people actually went back and learned and what's going on in our history, and then, so it's like we've been through a lot, but we're still around and we're still capable, and my hope is just that for a lot of artists to be inspired and not be turned down, but from what they're seeing. A lot of I got a lot of artists. They tell me, what are we doing this for? What is this for? 20 more years, we will not have any Christians existing in Iraq. So what is this for? What are we trying to do? Why are we doing it here? Athrat Nakhrai. I say no. This is more important to do Athrat Nakhrai. People need to know that we're existing, because if we do it in our country, obviously we need to rebuild. Yes, I mean, what can we do? We live in these countries now, and it's our part and our job and our duty to show these people that what. Yes, we are from there, and yes, we still do exist, and then hope one day that we will rise again and move forward.
Have you been back to Iraq since your family came to the United States?
No, it's been my dream to do that. Honestly, like a lot of things just hold me back. Maybe because of what's happening there. I'm afraid for my life. I have a kid, so I'm always thinking about a lot of things. But it's been my dream to visit. It's almost like I say to myself always, I wish one day they could tell me, it's 100% okay to be back there. And I want to go visit all these historical places and just to revisit my country. I mean, that's my dream, yes. I would love to one day.
Do you think if you went there, it would be a different level of inspiration for you?
Of course, because all these years, I left young. So when I left Iraq, I really didn't know where I came from and who I was. We're kids. Even if our parents told us, we probably just didn't listen. We didn't care. I mean, it was okay. But growing up and knowing about my history and my people, yes, it's gonna have a big impact on me when I go back there, because of all these years that I've been involved with my culture. It's like amazing to be able to see the real stuff. This is what we've been working for. This is what we've been studying. This is what we've been trying to accomplish. Everything we've been trying to accomplish it's in that land. I'm here, yes. So it's of course I would love to one day to see it. It will inspire me a lot too.
You said you have a kid.
Yes.
How old is your kid?
So my son is 6 years old. Yes, and if you're gonna ask me, is he an artist? Maybe he likes to draw. So I bought him a drawing board, and he when he's around in the house, I bring him to my studio sometimes. But I see him that I teach him some things, and sometimes he draws things and he shows us. So I hope he's got it in him like me, but I'm not gonna pressure him.
What are you looking forward to in terms of your son growing up and seeing your art and learning about his history and where his dad was born and where his dad comes from and who he is?
Oh yeah, so that's gonna happen for sure, because I've done a lot of pieces that I attribute to him. So I'm hoping one day when he grows up and he realizes that his dad has worked all his life for these people, and I'm gonna definitely push him to do that also. I will teach him about this and history. I mean, he doesn't have to necessarily be an artist, but if he wants to, I'll be his number one fan, obviously, and I will push him and teach him. But yes, I will definitely have him learn about his history and never to forget it. To see where we came from, and I'm always thinking, someday I have a lot of work in public, and I always wonder how he's gonna feel when he starts understanding that his dad did this. That would be a great feeling.
Do you have any pieces that you've done that you won't ever sell to anybody, and they're just that personal to you?
I have a few pieces, yes, that I've done. It's a lot of those pieces. A lot of times, it's not good for an artist to hold on to his piece too much, because you have to always improve and move forward. You have to always do better than your last piece. But there's been a few pieces that it's been very close to my heart, and I don't let go of those pieces. And a lot of times it's because the quality of that work at that time was, when I worked on that piece, was very good. I thought it was very good. So when I take it to my shows and display it, I think those pieces show what I am capable of doing now, at this age. So yeah, I got a few pieces that I don't let go.
How do you go about arranging shows where you showcase your work?
So a lot of times people just call me, and a lot of the gallery that they're doing a certain show, they would like me to join and bring some pieces. A lot of times our organizations, they put shows together, and a lot of times it's just artist friends. We gather and we decided to do like a show together. I've never done a solo show yet, but I'm hoping very soon, maybe in Chicago, I'll have a solo show. I'm just preparing. I've just been really busy doing commission work now. I haven't really had time to do more of my personal work. But when I have a few weeks in between projects, I manage to paint or sculpt a few things and keep them on site for those shows. So hopefully one day, very soon I'll have my own solo show in Chicago.
There are things that we do for a living, and then the thing we do to get away sometimes from what we do for a living. I love to read,
Yeah.
and so when I'm not working, I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
The thing you love to do is sculpting and painting, but
Yeah.
that's also your day job. So
Yeah.
how do you balance those two things? What is your work-life balance like?
So I've got other hobbies that I also, yes, I don't consider my art being work, because if I do that, then I'm not gonna enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a passion. My art is passion. It's not a job for me. Even though I have my own studio, and yes, I do get commission work, and I make my living from art, but I don't consider it as work. I consider it as a passion. And every piece that I do, I put all my passion into it. Even though that piece is not going to be mine. My name is on that piece forever, but doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to the person that paid for it. So, but I put all my hard work into it. But I also have, yes, as much as I love to paint and sculpt, I'm a human being. I need to have my mind off of that for a little bit, just to refresh myself. So I've got a hobby that it's a crazy one. I fly like a lot of RC jets.
Oh.
Yeah, so I go to we go to clubs and we fly RC jets, RC helicopters. I mean, I do all kinds of crazy stuff. We have those electric skateboards. We go take them, and we go for miles, riding with friends, and just to keep my mind. I mean, among other things, I have
Sure.
a lot of hobbies that I like to do to keep my mind a little bit off of work or art.
How important is it for you to be a part of a community of artists?
It's very important. I love being with artist friends. I love when they call me and tell me, hey Reni, we're gonna gather. We're going to the museum today. Maybe 15 of us. So it's very important to be with other artists. It's always, as an artist, you always have to refresh your mind. You have to see other people's work. You have to be open-minded to other people's work. Give and take, and be able to accept people criticizing your work in a good or bad way. So to me, it's very healthy to be a part of artist community and friends, to have artist friends, to go on for a coffee and talk about each other's work and what they're planning to work with. So it's very important.
What do you hope to see in the future in the Assyrian artist community?
That's a good question. I would love to see one day that we work together. Hand in hand, honestly. None of that old-fashioned jealousy stuff, the old-fashioned mentality, that a lot of, unfortunately, I don't want to, there's no names that are going to be mentioned, but some of the artists have conflict with each other, as in, Assyrian artists or Chaldean artists or whatever you want to call them. But I've seen some conflict between artists. And my hope is one day to work together, because after all, no matter what we do in this world, no matter what kind of art we produce, in the end, we are doing it for our culture. We are going to be. They will say this is a Syrian artist that created this masterpiece. So in the end, we go back to who we are. So to working together, I would love to see for artists, come closer and just join each other and work very close and teach each other.
What has the support from the Assyrian community been like for you and your work over the last few years?
It's been great, honestly. The support that I've had, I get a lot of artists complaining about how we don't get support from our own people. I mean, I've been through that a little bit before, growing up, but that was also because I needed to improve my work. I mean, you need to show quality work for people who are going to commission you to do quality work. So to me, it's been great, honestly. I mean, lately, past all these years, I've never had any issues with anybody. People have been very supportive. All our a lot of the foundations, a lot of the organizations have been great supporter to me. They commission me to do lots of work. So I'm hoping everybody gets that. I'm hoping all the artists get piece of that, and to be able to show their work, all around the country. So
I hope that one day we have some kind of a museum that displays the work of artists like you, because that would be really nice to see. What do you think about that?
I think that's an amazing idea. I think sometimes a lot of the money is being spent for a lot of things that probably are not going to make a difference in our people. But to have a art gallery or a big art gallery that displays a lot of the artists from around the world, not just this country, just like a big gallery that every month have certain artists to be displayed together. This month's show is gonna be Paul Betu, Reni Stephan, whatever. We have 5 artists this month, and to have these galleries, maybe honestly one in every probably state that we have a lot of people living in. So it'll be amazing. Art is it's life-changing. Art is what culture is all about. I mean, how would we have known where we came from if it wasn't for all these artifacts? How do we know who we are if it wasn't for these things that were under the ground and now it's existing in front of us? So art is very important for any culture, and I think our people should really embrace it and have art galleries for all artists to show their work with, because in the end, artists are very important for this culture.
What strikes me about the work that you do and the work that a lot of artists do is that it does remind you of the past, but with an eye to the future, because you're also hoping that in the work that you're doing, people in younger generations and people in future generations will look back at your work and know who they are and know where they came from. So that's interesting to me too.
Of course, a lot of times when I see, when I go especially to AUAF in Chicago, and I see all these kids' artwork being displayed, because they teach art there. They have art classes completely free for whoever wants to learn. That's amazing. I mean, that's great. Music and art. So every time I go there, they have these drawings or paintings of young kids that 13, 14, 10, 9, 8, being displayed on these walls. And I see some of those pieces, they have the Lamasso done in their own way. That makes my heart so big, because I feel like, okay, yes, I do come from new generation, but I am 36 now, so I'm kind of considering myself a little bit older. So I see a lot of younger now generation. Actually, when I see their work, and I see, no matter what kind of work they're doing, even if it's abstract, all paint all over the canvas, and then in the middle you see a Syrian star. That makes my heart so big, really, and because I feel like this culture is really moving forward. And to see these teachers and these parents teaching their kids about this culture, even though we are far away from our homeland, it's very moving to me. So I would like to see more of that.
What are some of the challenges that you faced as an artist when you were first starting, or even as you had started to work as an artist?
In the beginning, I did a lot of. I started with mostly drawing, and then I moved on into. There's a process called wood burning. So like you use like a hot tool and you burn the wood. I've done quite a few pieces of those. So the only challenges that I had, difficulties that I've had was, when you're a beginning artist, you overlook, you haven't studied really the anatomy of the horses and people. So a lot of times you just do things freehand, and you look at a certain reference and you kind of don't get it dead on. Maybe human faces, maybe the face is a little bit small, maybe a little bit big. So you get people telling you, hey, how come you have this head is bigger than the body, or the leg is bigger than this? So I still have that in the back of my head. Like I still remember that was my biggest fear, that was my biggest challenge actually. Like when I do a piece and what the people are gonna say, because we as Syrians we tend to we don't look at the important part of the subject. We like to kind of show pick on certain things. So I've had quite a few of those kind of people during beginning of my art career. So in the beginning, I used to get really frustrated, and I thought about quitting a million times. And said, you know what, no matter what I do, our people are never gonna like it. No matter what I do, but no, I stuck to it because my dad kind of pushed me. Said, look, these people gotta make you stronger, not don't put you down. So I took that lesson and just studied and got better. So these were the challenges that I had, growing up with art.
What is your advice for anyone listening who might be an aspiring artist?
My advice to them is, if you love it even 5%, pursue it, because you never know what you have inside of you. See, I have a lot of people that come into my studio that have never even picked up a brush or pencil or drew anything in their life. I mean, they've seen art, they've maybe did a few drawings back when they were in school. I've taught these people drawings that are probably in late high school or maybe even beginning of college level, and it took them probably a few months because they had it in them. They really wanted to learn how to draw. They always wanted to draw. They for whatever reason they have in their life that kept them away from it. Now it's like they see my work and they get inspired and they say to me, Reni, can you teach us how to draw faces? I tell them, I'm not going to teach you how to draw faces. I'll teach you how to draw the foundation of art, and then you could move on into faces. I think a lot of people that came here and I taught them how to do certain things, I was very shocked. I was shocked to see somebody that never had any art lessons before, and to take a short period of time and to create a really nice, beautiful piece of art that could even be displayed in an art show. So that those people had it in them, and they have the love for it, but they're always afraid to do it because they didn't have anybody to lead them the right way. So to me, anybody that's interested to pursuing art, I think studying art is very important. No matter how much we love to do it alone, no matter how much we love to look at a certain picture and do it, there is foundation that needs to be learned, and everything will just make sense to you in the end. So yes, if you are an inspiring artist, definitely you should go for it. At least try.